Okay, so the previous video I made about Bill Cassidy and the Republicans, I don't feel like I really got into the legislative stuff enough, even though it was about the bills he was proposing. So let's look at the actual outcome of what these people are creating. This is a House, a Senate, and a presidency that are controlled by the Republican Party. So on the border security issue, on Homeland Security, they are appropriating money for 90 miles of border wall system. Border wall system, not border wall. The border itself is 2,000 miles. So they're talking about constructing a border wall system for 4.5% of the border for 1 year. So maybe after 4 years of the Trump presidency, you get 20% of border wall system, maybe, and the other 80% is not constructed. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen, but based on what they've done here for this year, it doesn't look very good, right? So how much money have they appropriated to spend on it? A total of $14 billion for customs and border protection, but for the wall itself, they're spending $1.5 billion. So $1.5 billion on the physical wall system infrastructure. Now, let's compare that to, let's see, $2.2 billion for investigations and $2.7 billion on the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard gets $2.7 billion, and the wall system, which is not actually a wall, gets $1.5 billion. Now, they're also appropriating $3.1 billion for 40,000 detention beds. So they're spending $3 billion on beds. Now, those are people who are going to be sleeping in America, who are already detained for one reason or another. But we can't actually build the wall, right? Critical infrastructure, etc., $7.9 billion for the Transportation Safety Administration. That's the TSA, the people you hate at the airport, and $2 billion for the Secret Service. So the Secret Service is going to get more spending than the wall. Firefighters are going to get $700 million in grants. So, we're not getting a whole lot of money here for the wall, but let's look at the military spending. $654 billion, $23.8 billion for 14 Navy ships. Keep in mind the wall was getting $1.5 billion. $10.2 billion for 90 F-35s. The wall was getting $1.5. The F-35s are getting 10. The wall got $1.5, but $2 billion are going for 24 Super Hornets, whatever a Super Hornet is. $1.6 billion for 30 new and 50 fixed up Apache helicopters. So the Republicans, the GOP, the United States government is spending the same amount on a wall system that they're spending on Apache helicopters. That tells you something about their priorities, right? They're spending more on tankers. They're spending more on MC-130Js, whatever that is. The troops are getting a pay raise of 2.5%. Future technologies to remain on the forefront of defense is going to be $90 billion, $16 billion above last year's spending. So our defense spending for research, just purely research, nothing that's actually going to be on the ground anytime soon, was $16 billion, which is 10 times more than what the wall system was getting. $65.2 billion for the Global War on Terror / Overseas Contingency Operations Fund to provide resources to prepare ongoing threats and support our key allies like Israel and Ukraine. So we have to spend $65 billion beefing up Israel and beefing up Ukraine, which I guess is essentially like our colony or client state at this point. We've got to fund their military because their military can't even defend itself against rebels in the east. So we're going to have to pay for that, and we're going to pay for that to the tune of $65 billion for there in Israel and probably some other places too. But the GOP, the Republicans, the conservatives could only come up with $1.5 billion for the wall. You got to ask yourself, why are you continuing to vote for these people? Why don't you run yourself, or why don't you go to their town halls and start, accusing them of all this publicly? These people know what they're doing. They're not stupid. They are controlling the largest and most powerful country that has ever existed in the history of the world, the richest country that's ever existed, and they're spending $1.5 billion this year on the project that the American people asked for. And they're spending $654 billion on running a gigantic interventionist military. Just do the proportions, just do the ratios, just compare how much they're spending on X versus Y. And I can tell you that if you went to them and said, look, our commitment to Israel, can it be shown in spending? They would say, of course, that's why we spend so much money on Israel every year. We have to protect it. It's very important. They don't give a shit about the southern border. They don't care about Mexicans coming to this country. They don't care about anyone coming to this country. As far as they're concerned, it's more people to produce GDP for them to play with and get kickbacks from. Okay, sorry to be so negative, but I felt like it was worth looking at. Thank you for your time.